I think the starting point for my talk, I think, has a reference to the National Development Plan that, as I said earlier, that was led by a very prominent group of politicians and consultants. Trevor Manuel, I believe, was the coordinator of that task, and it had a very, topical ambition of elimination of poverty and the reduction of inequality by 2030. As I was driving to work today, I realized that it's also today a World Poverty Alleviation Day, if I put it correctly. So the ambition of this National Development Plan, which was our guiding document at the time, which still is as written here. I won't repeat it just for the sake of time, but I've highlighted in bold letters what I think we want to think about again today and see how far have we traveled since 2012. South Africa can realize its goal by drawing the energies of its people, growing the inclusive economy, building capabilities, etc. For the state and promoting the leadership and partnership throughout the society. That was that. And if I can then move on to the next slide. I know I'm doing this manually. I hope it is not very bad on your side, on your screen. Let me see if I can do it. Is that on the whole document, which is hundreds of pages, when you do what is called a word crunch, you can use various applications for that. You will find many words. The bigger the word, the more frequently it is used in the document. And I have not seen the word research. I have not seen the word innovation. If it is there, it must be very tiny and small. So I am worried about that, in that if we are looking at the national development and we do not have the sense of investment in R&D, it probably is something that we should be worried about. Perhaps as scientists, as research institutions, perhaps we didn't really keep our influence in this document, and how that can influence our target for 2030, I don't know, but I feel that R&D is the vanguard of any society, as we know that all over the world, countries that invest in R&D are quite. If you're not seeing what you're seeing at the top of the screen, this is the knowledge. If we were to look at the toolbox of the country, our nation, South Africa, these institutions that you are seeing here are the knowledge generators. You will see that the ARC is amongst the science councils, about 10 of them or so, including our cousins, the CSIRs, the MRCs, etc. The universities are all bundled under University South Africa, and we also have many others that are related to the research stations of the National Research Foundations. This is just to orientate all the colleagues during the next 2 days about where we fit as the ARC in this portfolio. I can also move quickly into the ARC now, as I highlighted in the previous slide, and say, who are we as the ARC? The Agricultural Research Council is by law, under the ARC Act of 1990, the de facto or the premier science generator or research organization for agriculture in South Africa, just like the Medical Research Council is for the Department of Health. We are organized almost like a company. We have the board, we've got a CEO. This is the Dr. Maginga currently, standing with the Minister of Agriculture, who is currently our Chief Executive Officer and President. And we, in my portfolio that I'm not presenting under it, but I'm generally can focus on the agricultural sciences. But Professor Maiwashi is under animal sciences. We've got also many other colleagues. Apologies about these pop-ups. I don't know how to switch them off, colleagues, but I will try my best to move and make sure that they don't disturb us. We have this whole portfolio. I'll come back to it in the next slide or so, but just safe to say that I will give some examples because we are limited with time. ARC is such a big organization that if I was to give any justice to all of it, I will not cover that in the next 20 minutes that remains on my talk. So as I say, I will give some case studies, one or two. But I just want to give you some information about where the ARC programs are mainly focused. We are doing R&D on crop production, crop improvement, and crop protection across the board. We do the same for animal production, animal health, and improvement across the board. And we also know that all of these, as you can imagine, everything that we eat, everything that gets us, from breakfast to supper, will either be produced through crops or through animal products, directly fresh or agro-processed. We need natural resources because all of these, they grow under natural resources, such as climate, such as water, such as environmental factors, etc. I will also maybe touch, if I do have time, on the fact that in addition to natural resources, we need specific engineering expertise that are for agriculture, that can improve, the precisions of our work, get our producers to be more efficient and more productive. We have also a portfolio and activity in agro-processing, food safety. We've got smallholder farmer development, agricultural economics and commercialization, and sometimes training and extension goes across the board on all of these. But the extension, as we all know in South Africa, it used to be a very, very active vocation. It's something that the ARC is working very, very hard to fill the gap in terms of the technology transfer from science to the farmer to the plate. I will not go into corporate affairs because all the organizations, they do have the HR, the finance, and the facilities divisions. The ARC is a very, very lucky organization with regards to its infrastructure, what I can call our portfolio of land and resources such as buildings, and in billions of rands, if not less than two. I would not be surprised if our total assets register across the country is over 2 or 3 billion rands. We've got institutes and farms across the country. I'll just highlight where I am right now in Stellenbosch, but most of the colleagues are in Pretoria. They are in all the way to the north, in the northern geographic area. Tropical and subtropical crops are researched in Mpumalanga. And just to save time also, I put this in a cartoon form. Every dot that you see there is a research activity that the ARC is doing, either in a form of a research farm, an institute, or a research station, or even test centers. You can even feel this further when you know that we collaborate also with other organizations to do trials in their farms, both private and parastatal companies that we collaborate with. So our portfolio of research, you can see, is covering the entire South African footprint. In terms of our research capacity as the organization, we historically, we used to get all of our research money from the fiscus. That was the good, quote unquote, good old days where the taxpayer covered everything. But over time, particularly with the deregulation of the South African agricultural industry had to come in and cover what government used to do, because now, farmers can trade without the government restrictions, and therefore what used to be collected as tax, now we can negotiate with our commodity bodies and balance our now reducing parliamentary grant, which currently is actually around 50, and in good years up to 60%. There are good and bad years, but the rest we have to get it from funded or commissioned research, both from private sector, from other government departments, and so on and so forth. There is also another document that I also want to touch on. Some colleagues in the audience might be familiar with. It was popular 10 years or more ago, the bioeconomy strategy. South Africa also came up with a bioeconomy strategy. We looked at amongst our commodities, because we can't be good at everything. If we were to prioritize as the country, which commodities, which structures are, in fact, we want to, which things, which outputs or outcomes we want. Obviously, the country has job problem. Jobs are dwindling. The higher intense the commodity production is, the higher I think government wants to focus on in terms of our priorities. So the top quadrant there, the top right, where there is a high growth potential as well as labor intensiveness or intensivity. I don't know which is the best English word, is probably the best quadrant to be in. And the example that I'll be using today is fitting into that quadrant, as you will see in the next few slides, for obvious reasons. But the ARC works across all of these commodities. And other colleagues, if they were here, they would be able to testify on that. I want to quickly move on then to the case study that I'll be talking about today and look at my mandate as the Institute of the ARC based in Stellenbosch. Our research is into deciduous fruits. Deciduous fruits are those fruits that lose their trees that lose their leaves in winter, if you remember your botany at high school and university. And currently we are at our springtime, so our plants are flowering. They are making fruits. You will know from from driving to the Western Cape that we all these deciduous fruits are very much grown here. Almost over 80% of the deciduous fruits are produced in this corner of the continent. There are advantages. Well, obviously for the farmers here, it's a big advantage, but for the nation at large, it's a high risk because you cannot depend on one province for these. And the ARC had to come in to say, how can we do research that can not liquidate, but reduce this risk of having all of these? Because we do know that several years ago, around 2015 up until around 2021 or 2020, we had a big drought here, which threatened the whole of the Western Cape as the agricultural hub, in that we were going to day zero for water scarcity. So I'll make an example about what we did 20 years ago to foresee for such a risk. So obviously, given that my institute is based here, all of these are within the portfolio of our institute called Infruitec Nietvoorbij, which is one of the 10 institutes of the ARC. Second biggest, I think, if I'm not mistaken, after API in terms of the budget allocated by the ARC. Infruitec Nietvoorbij, which is not showing here, but it was in my first slide. It has a double barrel name because the institute used to be traditionally known for both fruit and wine. Previously, there were two institutes that were amalgamated into one. I'm putting that red star there just to show the where my institute is based there, but we also have research station regionally in the province, etc. Just a brag slide to show you producing cultivars is not an easy thing to do. It's relatively easy, but it's not the easiest in terms of the logistics, in terms of the time, in terms of the expense. It is quite expensive. I'm just showing you now just the last 10 years or so, 10 to 13 years or so, that we as the Institute have released not less than 60 cultivars. Those are apples, pears, and everything else that you see there. And I'll show you some more of those examples. I wish I can delete that meeting. But let me continue, colleagues, otherwise it will disturb my flow if I was to go and delete it. So as I say, these are vanguards of our industry. As you know, that these are the GDP generators. Most of these, almost 80% of them, are produced for the export market, which is good in terms of the fiscus, in that most of it that goes to Europe, we get paid in euros, and all those euros, they come back to the fiscus, and the taxpayer does get a good benefit share in the billions of rands. So amongst them, if I can just show some few examples of what I call novel products that you may not notice at the shelf, but these apples that we are giving the prefix Afri are Afri range apples. The specialty about it is that they are low chill apples, meaning they don't need the Mediterranean climate that the Western Cape has been blessed with, which made it the basket of the fruit for the country. These apples, believe it or not, they are growing as far north as the province of Limpopo. The biggest customer that buys our fruit, the farmer that produces our fruit, actually is in the province of Limpopo. There are more low-chill apples grown in Limpopo than they are grown in the Western Cape. So that is that innovation that I was talking about that we have had to foresee. And you can imagine industry as a partner to the ARC would not have been enthusiastic to fund such a project, because normally people that are already at the top of the ladder, there is a hesitancy in spreading out that advantage. In the eyes of industry at the time we were doing this work of the development of low-chill apples was, well, if the northern provinces, I'm using the word northern just as a loosely, there will be too many apples in the industry, using apples as an example, and therefore the prices will plummet. And therefore, we cannot support this type of research because it will be in the disadvantage of our Western Cape farmers. But the ARC, which is what science councils and publicly funded institutions across the table currently today should do, is that we must be the voice of reason and look beyond just what is in front of our toes and look further into the horizon, which I'm grateful to Ivan Labushkachny and other colleagues that have continued to do this work regardless. So what it has done now, as you can see, now the ARC changed gear. Sorry, I'm going ahead of myself. I'm just using these apples' performance in the industry just as a case in point. People said that these were not going to work, but you can see how they have performed. These were released initially around 2014, around 2014-15, when I started as the director of the institute. We pushed and promoted them together with our partners. And you will see that, any performance like this is a performance that anyone wants to be there. And these numbers that I'm putting in dotted lines, I have not really quantified, but it is a very growing industry. And what it does, it creates jobs. It produces the GDP. It gives more apples to schools and so on and so forth, which to me talks to the topic of today's theme. I am now moving to some other examples, so you can now look at these apples. And the other thing about these apples that was predicted is that they probably were not going to keep at the shelf. And these apples have proven us wrong in that they are not only beautiful because of the unusual climate that you have up there in the north, but they are also even more resilient than we thought after harvest. And the other nice thing about it, I'll show you with a slide, in that our economics in South Africa for many, many, many hundreds of years has been Eurocentric. We are producing these fruits and our target destination markets are in Europe. Now the world has changed, particularly after 1990 and even more so after COVID of 2020. Now we're finding that Southeast Asia, China, India are becoming our markets. But still, we have ignored a very, very important growth factor in terms of the population, the African continent. These apples, believe it or not, one of the producers, black producers in Mpumalanga, tells us that it is amazing. Traders, they come to his farm to harvest the apples. And those apples are not only sold in South Africa, but they go into Zimbabwe, they go into Mozambique, they go to Swaziland, Lesotho, Angola, and so on and so forth. So that is something that we were blindsided with our stereotypical Eurocentric market. And given that the African population is going to be growing faster than any other population, I think the ARC is in a sweet spot to develop products like this one. This slide, unfortunately, I wanted to show it as a flying slide because behind this pie chart at the bottom, it talks about canned fruit. Believe it or not, if you've bought a canned fruit in the last few days, and I know it used to be cheap, but now these cans are so expensive that you probably don't want your child to look at them because they are nice to eat, but they have probably doubled their price since 5 years ago. All of these are ARC cultivars, about 100% of them. I use the word 98% because now there are foreign products that are coming into the market. But this is the growth of the canning industry just alone. You will know why it would have been flat up to 1992, up to 1994, because of the sanctions that South Africa was under. Then the deregulation of the industry happened in 1997, and the free market now came in, and this is the growth of the industry, which is where now government said, if the industry is growing like this, government cannot only be any funder of this R&D. Those that are benefiting from it must fund the companies like the ARC to continue to produce products that can give them the competitive international advantage that we are currently enjoying as the country. I want to give another example, colleagues, quickly, because I'm seriously running out of time. Also, a production of table grapes. Also a very healthy growth of the ARC IP portfolio into the market. I also want to share with you, not only grapes are eaten as they are in terms of what we call the table grapes, but we also have dried grapes. Raisins is nothing else but dried grapes. The Northern Cape is one of the driest, well, it is the driest province of the country, but raisin production is their vanguard there. 90% of all raisins produced in South Africa come from that province, which gives that province a competitive advantage. And what did it do? It took nature. The reason that it grows there is that in summer, the Northern Cape is very, very dry and there's little or no rain. And that's what you want for production of raisins, because they are not dried in any fancy way. They are open dried in the sun. And if you had rain, then your whole production will be ruined. So that's basically what I wanted to share with you, just to give an example, a break example of one of the ARC. We just released the very first ever cultivar of raisin called the Sandana, which we launched just as at the time we were coming through COVID in 2020. And this is a close to 5 billion rands industry. And the MEC who came to visit me a couple of weeks ago is very grateful to be partnering with the ARC in this. I won't really go into detail, but yes, jobs are created. Yes, households are supported. And the advantage, you use the geographical advantage of the province, and that's what we want to support. I will then quickly switch gear and go to other things, and these are all going to be pictures just for your interest and also keeping you, at least awake. There is a rooibos and honeybush. Believe it or not, this is a lot. We're doing a lot of work in rooibos and honeybush. Honeybush, some people are not familiar with, but we are, as the ARC, promoting honeybush together with funding from DSI. We are grateful for that sustained funding for the number of years, many years, that we are hoping we are delivering what they are seeing, that this particular herbal tea is also growing into the same league as the rooibos. We are calling honeybush the next rooibos of the country. Another example of, sorry, how much time do I have?
You've run out of time. Can you wrap up soon?
Okay. I will then skip then that by just repeating to say that we are exporting almost all of these products, but they can go into the continent. All these slides that I have here are various examples, niche products that we can also produce for our agro-processors, are dried seeds from grape seeds. And so those who've seen prosidin in the shelves will know that prosidin is nothing else but the grape seed. So answering the question, hopefully, is that what is the take-home message from the talk that I've just given right now? Is that, yes, the ARC is contributing to the sustainable socio-economic development of this country in many ways. We are giving we are doing applied research. That's the difference between the Science Council and the universities, that we are focused more on getting products that can be delivered and be applied or sold by the end users. Development of our staff, professional development program is one of our elements. Technology transfer of our products to industry. And I did mention the National Development Plan, and currently the latest guiding document for the development in our sector is the Agriculture and Agro-Processing Master Plan. Those who are interested in it can read about it. That's what we as the ARC are gearing ourselves for. And this is basically my last slide, Chair. Sorry for running over for a few minutes, but I think it's worth to say that in terms of the agriculture, I am challenging our discussions here today because I don't see why a war as far away as in places like Russia and Ukraine can determine the price of staple food here in Africa, given the continent's resources in terms of the soils, in terms of the waters in many places, and the climate, and the human resources in terms of labor. Thank you very much, colleagues, for your attendance, and sorry for your attention. And I use this cartoon, well, this chicken, because now things like eggs as well are becoming extremely luxury foods. But I would like to, you to talk to Professor Maiwashi, because this is what his division is specializing on. He's from the Animal Production Institute. He could have given the same advantages to what I've given from the crops angle. Thank you very much. And I would like to leave you with this slide. Thank you.